Lenny Wilkens was the epitome of a basketball lifer, starting his journey in the playgrounds of Brooklyn before starring for the legendary Boys High School. After a great career at Providence, he was the sixth pick in 1960 by the St. Louis Hawks. Lenny was simply a point guard in his purest form. Even with the strict rules around dribbling at the time, he had a deadly crossover that led to his unorthodox southpaw jumper. Even though everyone knew he was driving left, that didn't mean they could stop him, as he easily sliced through the defense, being able to contort his body and making some ridiculous layups. He also had a lethal running hook across the lane, an unusual skill for his position. Lenny was someone who liked to share, even leading the league in assists at one point. He attacked the glass pretty well despite being only 6'1", so he was a nightly triple-double threat. The mental aspect of the game was one of his biggest strengths, as he had elite court vision and possibly the highest basketball IQ of all time. He was so much of a leader that he was one of the few guys that played and coached at the same time. Since he already had the experience, it was only right that he would have a job on the sidelines once his playing days were over. He helped the Sonics completely turn their season around, earning a title in 1979. Lenny would serve as a great leader for the next 3 decades, eventually setting the record for coaching wins. He was a legend in 2 different fields, so it's only right that we talk about the extensive career of Lenny Wilkens. Welcome to PZ Hoops, and let's get down to it. Lenny was born on October 28, 1937 in Brooklyn, growing up in the Bed-Stuy neighborhood. He honed his skills on the playgrounds, where he had to prove himself just to stay on the court. He played at the legendary Boys High School under Mickey Fisher, as one of his teammates was future MLB star Tommy Davis. However, Lenny didn't even join the basketball team until his senior year, and he only played half the season. Even with this extremely small sample size, Lenny had shown enough to get a scholarship to Providence, where he was part of a 3-guard lineup that featured Walter DeMasi and Jim Schwartz, both under 6 feet. The Friars had the 4th best defense in the nation, allowing just 55 points a game. Lenny was second on the team in boards despite being only 6'1", but the 18-6 record wasn't enough for the big dance or the NIT, as Lenny averaged 15 points and 8 rebounds. The arrival of Johnny Egan in 1958 gave the Friars a huge offensive boost. They still maintained their elite defense, as they had 2 different 5-game winning streaks, with crucial wins over number 19 Villanova and number 14 St. Bonaventure. Providence made their first NIT appearance, but they lost to NYU in the final. For his junior season, Lenny averaged 16 points and 7 rebounds. James Hadnot was a great addition in 1959, as the Friars finally had a true center. By late January, Providence was 7-3 and they were ranked for the first time in school history. They ended the season on a 6-game winning streak as they were headed to the NIT. Although they were blown out by Bradley in the final, Lenny earned the NIT MVP along with an appearance on the second-team All-America, averaging 14 points and 7 rebounds. Lenny was one of the best point guard prospects of the 1960 draft, so he was chosen 6th overall by the St. Louis Hawks. Bob Pettit was still in his prime, while Cliff Hagan and Clyde Lovelet provided great support. Lenny started his career sharing point guard duties with Johnny McCarthy, but he had a breakout performance with 22 points and 7 rebounds in the Nationals. He was in the rhythm come February, dropping 9 20-point games this month, including a season-best 29 points, 7 rebounds, and 16 assists on the Royals. The Hawks' big 3 all averaged 20 and 10, and he also led the league in assists as a team. They finished atop the Western Division with a 51-28 record, as Lenny averaged 12 points, 5 rebounds, and 3 assists. The Hawks played the Lakers in the division finals, as Lenny dropped 19 points in his playoff debut, but it was a losing effort. He put up 15 points, 8 rebounds, and 7 assists in Game 6, and 21 points and 12 rebounds in the closeout Game 7. St. Louis was in the NBA Finals, and you should already know who their opponent was. This impenetrable fortress held Lenny to under 35% shooting, and the Hawks were dominated in a gentleman's sweep. Apart from his basketball duties, Lenny was also in the Army, so he spent most of the 1961 season on active duty. But even with his small sample size, he was highly productive, jumping 28 times, and even recording his first triple-double against the Lakers with 13 points, 10 rebounds, and 11 assists. This was one of the few bright spots for the Hawks though, as this season was essentially a wash, as they played 21 different guys and ran through 3 different head coaches, as they went from the NBA Finals to 29 wins. In his shortened season, Lenny averaged 18 points, 7 rebounds, and 5 assists. The Hawks had a great draft in 1962, selecting John Barnhill, Chico Vaughn, Bill Bridges, and Zelmo Beatty. Lenny was finally named a full-time starter, and he finally got to show off his all-around skill set. He dropped 28 points, 5 rebounds, and 6 assists on the Royals, 18 points, 9 rebounds, and 8 assists on the Warriors, and 18 points, 15 rebounds, and 6 assists on the Knicks. Lenny was 5th in assists and 11th in defensive win shares, so he earned his first All-Star nod this year. Bob continued to carry this team, and their top defense helped them finish 48-32. Lenny averaged 12 points, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists as the Hawks faced the Pistons in the semifinals. He truly came to play, dropping 18 points, 9 rebounds, and 6 assists in Game 1, and 20 points, 5 rebounds, and 10 assists in Game 3 of a 4-game series win. In the next round against the Lakers, he dropped 2 triple-doubles, but the Hawks were blown out in Game 7. St. Louis didn't change that much in 1963, as Lenny continued the same role. He dropped 20 points, 5 rebounds, and 9 assists on the Sixers, 23 points, 7 rebounds, and 6 assists on the Warriors, and 26 points and 11 assists on the Royals. He was in the top 10 for assists again, as he joined Bob in the All-Star game again. The Hawks continued to rely on their defense, allowing the third fewest points, and they finished with a 46-34 record. Lenny averaged 12 points, 4 rebounds, and 5 assists as the Hawks faced the Lakers in the semifinals. He nearly triple-doubled in Game 1 with 19, 12, and 7, while dropping 30 points on 61% shooting in the closeout Game 5. San Francisco stood between them and the finals, but their defense held Lenny in check. His best showing was in Game 4 with 16 points and 14 assists, but the Hawks lost Game 7 on the road and their season was over. Their draft haul in 1964 included Jeff Mullins, John Tresvant, and Paul Silas as the Hawks looked to improve. With Bob suffering through some injuries, Lenny and Zelmo would see an increased offensive role. He dropped 30 points, 5 rebounds, and 4 assists on the Lakers, 23 points, 7 rebounds, and 9 assists on the Bullets, and a season-high 36 points, 8 rebounds, and 6 assists on the Royals. Lenny had been known for his passing up to this point, but his scoring had taken a huge leap, as he averaged 22 points in December. Bill was playing extremely well in year 3, so the power forward position looked to be in good hands for the foreseeable future. Richie took over as the player coach after Harry Gallatin was fired, and the Hawks stuck to what they knew, finishing with a 45-35 record. Lenny averaged 17 points, 5 rebounds, and 6 assists, as St. Louis faced Baltimore in the semifinals. He opened the series on the right track with 25 points, but the Hawks lost a close one at home. After this one, the Rim seemed to have a grudge against him, as he shot just 25% over the next 3 games, and the Hawks were eliminated. The Bob Pettit era was over in 1965, so Zelmo now had the room to flourish. St. Louis also scooped up last year's number 2 pick Joe Caldwell, an athletic wing with unlimited potential. Lenny started this season with a bang, dropping 28 points, 6 rebounds, and 7 assists. He put up 20 points, 12 rebounds, and 10 assists on the Pistons, 29 points, 10 rebounds, and 6 assists on the Warriors, and 28 points, 5 rebounds, and 14 assists on the Warriors again. Zelmo had developed into an all-star, but the Hawks had regressed as a team. 36-44 was still enough for a playoff spot though, as Lenny averaged 18 points, 5 rebounds, and 6 assists. The Hawks had a chance for revenge against the Bullets, and Lenny was out for blood, starting with 27 points and 7 assists in Game 1, and 30 points, 8 rebounds, and 10 assists in Game 3 of a convincing sweep. The next round pitted the Hawks against the Lakers for a chance to lose to Boston in the finals. St. Louis looked doomed as they went down 3-1. Lenny was only shooting 32% up to this point, but great players always figure it out, as he redeemed himself with 29 points, 6 rebounds, and 12 assists in Game 5, followed by a triple-double in Game 6 to tie the series. Unfortunately, they couldn't get it done on the road, and they were eliminated. Lou Hudson and Dick Snyder were the new rookies in 1966, so the Hawks now had some much-needed scoring on the wing. Lenny was on a tear during the first 2 weeks, dropping 34 points, 7 rebounds, and 9 assists on 12 of 15 shooting against the Lakers, and a season-high 37 points, 8 rebounds, and 9 assists on them again. In addition to his 5 30-point games, he grabbed at least 10 boards 4 times, while also ranking 6th in assists, so Lenny had all areas covered. Bill established himself as one of the league's best forwards, while Lou's offensive output was advanced for a rookie as he led the team in scoring. Despite this, he was the runner-up to Dave Bing for Rookie of the Year. The Hawks are one of the least efficient offensive teams in the league, but 39-42 was enough for another playoff berth. Lenny averaged 17 points, 5 rebounds, and 6 assists as St. Louis faced the expansion Chicago Bulls in the semifinals. He shot 2 for 11 in Game 1, but he still dropped 20 points, 10 rebounds, and 6 assists in an easy win. This new team really wasn't a challenge for the Hawks, so they were swept. The Warriors were next, and although Lenny put up 31 points, 10 rebounds, and 6 assists in Game 1, San Fran came out on top. He was flirting with a triple-double average all series, but his shot stopped falling in the last few games, and the Hawks were eliminated in 6. The Hawks didn't really make any changes in 1967, but with Lou's military commitments, Joe would receive a major role increase. Lenny was entering his 8th season as a pro, but he was finally reaching his prime. He dropped 30 points, 12 rebounds, and 13 assists on the Knicks, 39 points, 7 rebounds, and 18 assists on the Sonics, and 19 points, 6 rebounds, and 19 assists on Seattle again. His scoring lead was a nice surprise, but his passing was his biggest asset, as he was second in total assists behind Wilt. Since he was the floor general for the best team in the Western Division, he was the runner-up for MVP. Paul Silas was emerging as another solid big man in the Hawks system, and he earned a top spot with a 56-win campaign. Lenny averaged 20 points, 5 rebounds, and 8 assists as St. Louis faced the Warriors again. Their dream season seemed to be slipping away though, as they went down 3-1 heading back to St. Louis. Lenny responded with 20 points, 7 rebounds, and 10 assists to help them stay alive. He put up 29 points, 6 rebounds, and 6 assists, but it wasn't enough, and the Hawks were eliminated in 6 games. The team was ready to move to Atlanta in 1968, and although Lenny had established himself as one of the top players in the league, the franchise wanted to start over. So at first, he was offered a pay cut. When he refused to take $1,000 less than his desired number, he was traded to the Sonics for Walt Hazzard. This brand new franchise was obviously needed some direction, so Lenny had a tall task ahead of him. Second-year forward Bob Brule was the main building block, while Art Harris, Tom Meshery, and John Trezevant ran out the starting lineup. Lenny essentially became a mini Oscar Robertson, dropping 30 points, 12 rebounds, and 14 assists on the Suns, 34 points, 14 rebounds, and 12 assists on the Pistons, and 36 points, 14 rebounds, and 14 assists on the Rockets. These were 3 of his 5 triple-doubles this season, as he was 9th in points and 2nd in assists. Bob was becoming one of the best young centers in the league, but Seattle really didn't have that much else, so a 30-52 record was expected. In his career season, Lenny averaged 22 points, 6 rebounds, and 8 assists. As a now 10-year vet in 1969, Lenny had seen it all, but his natural leadership drew him towards a desire for coaching. He often watched what other coaches did, and he would look at other clubs and figure out what made them so great. So in the summer of 1969, Lenny sat down with GM Dick Vertlieb as Seattle was looking for a new leader after the departure of Al Bianchi. As Lenny continued to receive questions about player assignments, strategy, and lineup decisions, he had a hunch that he was actually being considered. A few days later, he flew to LA to meet with the owner Sam Shulman, and Lenny was now a player coach, so his responsibilities grew even more. In his first season as a coach, he gave a little-known guard named Dick Snyder a chance, also signing former #1 pick Bob Boozer and UCLA great Lucius Allen. Lenny dropped 28 points and 17 assists on the Bulls, followed by 38 points and 12 assists the next game against the Pistons. He put up 28 points, 8 rebounds, and 18 assists on the Bullets, and 33 points, 10 rebounds, and 11 assists on them again. It was an unusual dichotomy for him, as he had to adjust his game to not only be effective himself, but to maximize the talents of his teammates, all while deciding the lineups. He was especially concerned with feeding Bob, as he averaged 25 and 10, making his All-Star debut. Out of all his years as a floor general, this is the only year that Lenny led the league in assists. He was under a lot of pressure to improve this team, and while a 36-46 record was a step in the right direction, it wasn't enough for the postseason. Lenny averaged 18 points, 5 rebounds, and 9 assists. His first season as a coach was a tumultuous one, as of course, black coaches really weren't a thing back then, with some publications even saying that the other black players in the league would lay down so he could win. Lenny admitted that his dual role was a large mental tax on him as well, as he said, "Last year, we had a couple of fellows who thought they should be playing when they weren't. They caused trouble on and off the court. It began to affect my play as I was thinking too much about it. I decided then that on the floor, I would be Lenny Wilkens, the player, nothing else. We began to win, and the trouble lessened. The paramount problem was to change the attitude of the club. They were defeatists. There was nothing like respect on the basketball team, towards the coach, toward one another. And I tried to set an example. The big thing Bill Russell did as coach of the Celtics was to be an example, to give 100% every night. My guys know that I'll give up the ball, that I'll pass. That makes it easier for them to do the same." As the 1970 season began, Don Smith and Don Kojas were great additions, and the Sonics looked to be ready for a playoff berth. But 4 games into the season, Bob tore his Achilles, and the year was essentially lost already, although Pete Cross did step in and provide a passable replacement. Coach Wilkens continued to stuff the stat sheet, dropping 15 points, 9 rebounds, and 19 assists on the Blazers, 35 points, 10 rebounds, and 10 assists on the Bulls, and 14 points, 8 rebounds, and 17 assists on the Braves. He even put up a career-high 41 points, 10 rebounds, and 9 assists on his former team. Owner Sam Shulman was working a lot of magic behind the scenes, and he managed to sign Spencer Haywood from the ABA, a move that caused all the other owners to cry foul, especially since Spencer didn't technically meet the NBA's eligibility requirements. Although Lenny looked forward to having Spencer, he was dealing with the media and the constant court battle, so he wasn't fully focused. On top of that, Don Smith's career would never be the same, as after he was diagnosed with pericarditis, a disease that causes heart inflammation, he would never play major minutes again. Don Kojas also broke his finger, while Lenny himself tore his hamstring, so it seemed like Seattle was cursed. Despite all this, they still somewhat improved, but 38-44 was still outside the playoffs. Lenny averaged 20 points, 5 rebounds, and 9 assists. It was clear that Bob's Achilles injury prevented him from ever reaching his all-star form again, so Spencer's production was much needed. Gar Hurd and Lee Winfield got bigger roles, as Coach Lenny had his best playmaking season yet. He dropped 16 points and 19 assists on the Lakers, 21 points and 15 assists on the Pistons, and a 13-game stretch averaging 22 points, 4 rebounds, and 12 assists on 51% shooting. Unsurprisingly, he led the league in dimes again, but he was snubbed from the All-Star game for the first time in 5 years. The emergence of Spencer meant that Seattle had found a viable replacement for Bob. However, they still felt that they needed a center, so they poached another big man from the ABA, as Jim McDaniels joined the team with 12 games remaining. The Sonics were firmly locked into a playoff spot in the beginning of April, but they collapsed, going 3-9 after the McDaniels signing. And although 47 wins put them among the league's best, they peaked at the wrong time, as they were in a division with the Lakers and the Warriors, who each won 69 and 51 games respectively. So Seattle was still looking for their first playoff appearance. Lenny averaged 18 points, 4 rebounds, and 10 assists. Lenny had been trying his hardest to make Seattle a contender, but so many factors that were outside of his control led to the current situation. He felt that the team had a reason to be proud, but it seemed like upper management had different ideas. Lenny read an article in the local paper that doubted his abilities to play and coach simultaneously, and he immediately knew who planted the story. He went to Sam about this, and after he verified the story, he pretty much gave Lenny an ultimatum: either coach or play. Since Lenny felt like he could play a few more years, Seattle repaid him by trading him to the Cavs for Butch Beard. After the move, Lenny said, "I felt like I had been part of management, building a team that was going places, and I was happy to keep building it as a player. It was unsettling, to say the least, to find out that they had deceived me all along." Lenny was relieved to not have the pressures of coaching again, so he could step in and provide leadership and cohesion to a relatively new Cavs franchise. Initially, he held out for the first 6 games as he considered his home and business interests in Seattle. But when he reported to the team, he and coach Bill Fitch sat and watched film for hours, constantly bouncing ideas off of each other. Now that Lenny could just play, he brought it back to his St. Louis days, jumping 25 points, 13 rebounds, and 6 assists in his second game with the team. He put up 31 points, 9 rebounds, and 11 assists on the Celtics, followed by 24 points, 5 rebounds, and 18 assists on the Pistons. Even though he was 35 years old and playing in his 9th All-Star game, he still played selflessly, sacrificing his scoring to stop Nate Archibald in the second half and lead the East squad to a win. Lenny was a solid veteran presence for this team, but the Cavs really didn't have the talent to compete, as they finished with a 32-50 record. Lenny averaged 21 points, 5 rebounds, and 8 assists. He took a step back in 1973, as the Cavs added Jim Brewer, Steve Patterson, and the remnants of Bob Rule to the mix. He put up 21 points, 7 rebounds, 7 assists, and 3 steals in the season opener, followed by 18 points and 20 assists on his former team. He had 16 games with at least 10 assists, but his perimeter defense was a bonus, recording at least 3 steals in 14 games. Dwight Davis and Bingo Smith were solid starters, but Cleveland didn't have enough offensive firepower, so they were stagnant with a 29-53 record. Lenny averaged 16 points, 4 rebounds, 7 assists, and 1.5 steals. He was ready to retire in the offseason, but when he returned to Seattle, he met with his friend Herman Sarkowski. Herman owned the Trailblazers and was also part of an ownership group trying to land an expansion NFL franchise in the Pacific Northwest. He convinced Lenny to coach in Portland, but much to his surprise, the Blazers also purchased his player rights. Lenny was tasked with figuring out how to mend the relationship between Sidney Wicks and Jeff Petrie, all while helping the newly drafted Bill Walton adjust to the NBA, all while also playing the backup point guard role. Lenny turned back the clock in his Blazers debut, jumping 15 points, 10 assists, and 7 steals. He put up 16 points, 4 rebounds, 10 assists, and 3 steals 2 weeks later on the Lakers, but after that, he was mostly on the sidelines in an attempt to allow the younger players to develop. But with Bill missing a large chunk of the season with a broken foot, the Blazers couldn't recover, missing the playoffs with a 38-44 record. In his final season, Lenny averaged 7 points, 2 rebounds, 4 assists, and a steal. Lenny retired as a player in the offseason. He became the full-time head coach. But after a subpar 37-45 campaign, Lenny and the new ownership group didn't see eye to eye, and he was let go. After a year off, he was hired again by the Sonics after they were 5-17 under Bob Hopkins. Lenny guided them to a 47-35 finish, where they lost a heartbreaking final series to the Bullets. The next year, they won 52 games and faced the Bullets again in the 1979 finals. But this time, they would be victorious, giving Lenny his first and only championship. Over the next 3 decades, he coached the Cavs, Hawks, Raptors, and Knicks, as in 1995, he broke Red Auerbach's record for the most coaching wins. He was an assistant for the 1992 Dream Team, and he was the head coach when Team USA won gold again in Atlanta in 1996. He earned a Lifetime Achievement Award in 2011, as he was a 3-time Naismith Hall of Fame inductee, as a player, a coach, and a member of the Dream Team. Lenny passed away on November 9th, 2025 at the age of 88. Lenny Wilkens exemplified what it really meant to be a point guard. He was able to see every player on the floor, recognizing their tendencies and exploiting mismatches. He wanted to get the best out of his teammates, as his leadership qualities allowed him to become a rare breed of player coaches. The ability to have all that responsibility and still be able to play at a high level is commendable. Lenny had respect from a lot of the league's top players, even if his relationships with owners weren't the best. His feel for the game and his IQ combined with his elite skill made him one of the best point guards to ever play. Lenny was the last real player coach the NBA would ever see, and he carried this role with dignity in class. Thank you guys. I really appreciate y'all for the support. I've been wanting to do this Lenny Wilkens video for a long freaking time. Just shout out to Lenny, man, because just the amount of responsibility that you have to be a player coach, because not only do you have to worry about getting your stats, getting your numbers, you got to make sure your guys get their numbers too. You got to make sure the lineups work right. You got to look at all the situational matchups. Like, it's just so much stuff you have to like manage on the court. You know, it's kind of weird. Also back then, you know, the relationships between the players and the front office was a lot different. I'm glad he was able to make an excellent career of himself. He's only 6'1", but he's playing like Oscar Robertson out there. He's getting boards, slicing through the paint, making all these crazy reverse double clutch under the basket layups. His jumper wasn't the most polished, but he was able to get it off. You knew he was going left, but you couldn't stop him going left. Shout out to Lenny, man, one of the best point guards to ever play the game, one of the best players to ever play the game. Being a player coach is just commendable. Shout out to them, man, because that takes a lot of basketball IQ. You really have to know the game. Leave a like, hit that subscribe button to my channel, turn on my post notification if you're ready. Thank you. Please be safe. I'm out. Peace.